Okay, so this is part 2 to the exercise. I've finished off the animation, and just to show you what I can do in 15 minutes, like I said earlier, I'm at my 10,000 hours with Flash, so I hit Command Return, and this is what we get to expect. It's wonderful. We put Flash in focus by clicking on it and hit Command Return. Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? This is a frame-by-frame animation of a ball bouncing. And we can start to really analyze this motion. It's kind of neat. As it falls, it accelerates due to gravity. As it bounces and compresses against the floor, it squishes, and just like a rubber ball, it gains energy so that it can spring back into the sky. And then as it hits the top of its apex, it starts to decelerate. And there's actually an interesting moment in physics when something is bouncing up and down. When it hits the top of its arc in motion, it's actually hovering in space, not moving at all. And then it starts to decelerate due to gravity and falls back down. I do digress and like to talk about things like physics from time to time, and that's fun. But physics are important to understand because we always want to translate the natural world into our animations and use that to our advantage. So there's lots of weird things that are actually being exaggerated here in the bouncing ball. Like, for example, before the ball hits the floor, look at how it stretches, right? That doesn't actually happen in real life. And there's a term we use in animation right here at frame 6 where that ball shouldn't be stretching. It hasn't compressed in any way, and that's called anticipation. And this clever tool was invented a long, long time ago to allude to the fact that maybe we have motion blur. Right? We don't have motion blur that we can draw frame by frame, but maybe this thing stretching out like this is giving the user, the viewer, some cues that maybe this thing is moving through space, and in a cinematographic term, that would be referred to as motion blur. So that's why we stretch the ball out like that. It's kind of interesting. Now I want to do this exercise again, and I want to maybe speed it up this time, and I'm going to speak less about the UI and just sort of go at this as a master. I'm going to use the pen tool, and what I need to do is create a new scene. So I'm going to search for where in this system I can, oh there it is, it's under insert. So I'm going to insert a new scene, and this is a clever way just to keep yourself organized. Now up here, if we look very carefully, there's this little clapper board, right? That's a symbol from the filmmaking world. When we click on it, we can get some interesting things going on. We can jump between our different scenes. Well, wait a second, I can click on it and then double click and it's not doing anything. So how do I get back to scene 1? I don't know what I'm doing here, but maybe underneath the scene panel, maybe there's a scene panel. Maybe I can say window, and under scene, I can bring up this panel. Oh, there it is. Awesome. So there's scene 1. You can see it in the background there. There's scene 1, and now we have scene 2. And really, in terms of Flash, it's just a clever way to keep ourselves organized. The timeline is just going to run through from scene 1 to scene 2. And we could actually create more scenes down here. And I'm going to need a scene 3. So while I'm thinking about this, I might as well throw scene 3 in there. And I wonder if I can change the names. Oh, cool. So this is going to be frame by frame. This one over here is going to be called what? We're going to call this motion path. We're going to use a motion path in this next demonstration. And then in scene 3, what's that going to be? Ooh, programmatic. We're going to programmatically, and I can spell, we're going to programmatically control motion somehow with codes. Interesting. So there's 3 different approaches to solve the same problem. And the third one's just going to make you all laugh. I hope it makes you laugh in the end. We're going to come back to that. Okay, so let me move a little bit quicker here. I need that other artwork brought forward. So I can go into my library, and just to prove a point, I can grab this from right here or up here, and I can just drag that onto my stage. Now, we want it to register exactly at the center, middle point of the height and the width of my stage. So watch this cool trick. I could try for days to try to nuzzle it in, or I could just go to my properties over here and type in 0, snap, 0, snap. Wow, that was easy and fast. Command 2, get that in view. Command 1, 100%. Command 2, 149% in my current stage size. That's really interesting. And once again, I don't want this to export. And just to reinforce, I'm going to double click and call this my tracing layer. And I'm going to right click on it and get into the properties. And carefully make sure I lock the layer so I can't pick it up. And I'm going to make it a guide layer so it doesn't export when I make my movie. And let me just prove that again. If I hit Command Return, the tracing layer is not visible. It just is left behind. It's left in the Flash Development IDE. I don't need it. That's pretty cool. There's a blink there. What's the blink for? See if that blink comes back. Oh, just a weird glitch on my computer. That's okay. Looking pretty good. So let's carry on. So this is scene 2, or now I've changed it. Whoops! Uh-oh! SpaghettiOs! Programmatic. That's wrong. That's not where I'm supposed to be at all. I'm in the wrong scene, and I got to be careful and mindful the whole way. So let's go back to the scene panel. Ooh, boy. I've got to go to motion path. All right, so let's reinforce that again. I'll go into my library. I'm going to grab my object. I'm going to drag it out. I'm going to go to properties. I'm going to just type in 0, 0, and get that thing centered. I'm going to right-click down here and go to its properties. I'm going to give it a good name. I can even do it right here. Tracing. I'm going to lock it and make it a guide. And, Bob's your uncle. Now I need another layer where I'm going to actually put my artwork. And this is where my ball is going to go. That's cool. And I'm going to grab my ball from the library here. MC ball. Well, I wonder if I can use that again. Oh, I can use it again. I'm going to drag it out here. But now we're going to try to do something unique. We're going to create a new layer down here, a very special layer. And what we can do with Flash, if we're using the pencil tool or we're using paths, we can actually have the ball follow a path. And that might be really handy and save us a whole lot of time. So I'm going to right click on ball, look and say, what can I do here? First things first, I really need to tell this layer that it's going to have a classic motion guide. A classic motion guide. So watch how Flash behaves when I choose this. It creates a new layer up here. It says guide and it indents ball. So it says that anything that's indented under guide is actually going to follow this layer, and it's got a pencil, so it's editable. That's cool. But I do need some frames, and if we can remember back to the count we did earlier, I'm going to need about 32. So I'm just going to right click. I'm going to insert some frames. That's cool. Now I've got regions to work in. There's that word again, some regions. And this one here, I'm actually going to ask Flash to do all the in-betweening for me. So when I right click, it's going to draw, it's under a motion guide, and that's a classic situation. Things have changed in Flash in recent years, and we can still reach back into the rich history of Flash and use some of the cool tools that were there. And one of these options is Classic Tween. And if we've made a classic motion guide, then it would make sense that we would need a Classic Tween. So let's create a Classic Tween and watch how Flash behaves. It suddenly turns this into a mauvey, purpley blue region. That tells me that Flash is ready to animate. And a common mistake students make and young animators make is if this object was just vector graphics, if it was just sitting on the stage and it wasn't a symbol in our library, then something goofy would happen. It would actually automatically make it an object in our library, and it would give it a really bad name. And by creating that as a movie clip beforehand, we avoid that situation. We get great names and we stay really organized. So now I'm going to lock this layer down here. Make sure I don't move that ball around. Actually, I'm going to hide it because it's going to visually get in the way of what I'm about to do. And this is a tough thing. This takes people a lot of time, and I'll be honest, my friend Claudia Stein challenged me in my early career to move away from a tool called Corel Zara and start using an industry strong tool called Adobe Illustrator, a sister or brother to Flash CC in the Creative Cloud. And it's got this weird tool that took me a long time to master. And I'll be honest, I worked with it probably at least 15 to 20 hours a week as an illustrator, and 6 months. 6 months later, I got good at it. And once I got good at it, wow, it opened up so many opportunities to me. And there's a lot of keystrokes that we got to memorize, and there's lots of things that we got to keep in mind. Look at this guy here. It's called the pen tool. And it shows up everywhere, people. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous with graphic design tools like Photoshop and Illustrator, and it's really powerful. I'm going to choose this option. It doesn't have many properties itself. It does have, stroke width, the type of line we're going to draw with it, and I'm just going to keep it at its default stroke height of 1. And maybe just for fun, I'll just click and drag. It says, what is locked or hidden? What's going on here, Flash? The current layer is locked? Unlock ball? No! What did I do wrong? I didn't tell Flash what layer I'm going to work on, and that's super important. And I even have to tell Flash, just to be really clear, that I want to work here by clicking on that empty keyframe. Very important. So now I'm going to start drawing because it's unlocked, and if I click and draw, it's like wee-doo-doo-doo. That's fun. You know, it's got all this, it's cool. And then if I look carefully, when I come back round and I bring my pen tool, it makes a little interesting O right beside the pen. That's telling me that I'm closing the shape off, and that's great. If I click and drag while I make these different points on the line, these weird things come out, and they're called, you know, Bezier handles, and they help us to control the curvature, and we can create things like cusps, like so. So we get a nice little pointed feature in there. I'm going to tap the V key and the selection tool, and now I can really see that there's a cool selection there. And Flash is weird. Unlike any other illustration program I've seen, even though this is vector graphics, watch this. I tapped the V key, I've got my select tool on. I can click and drag a box, right? I'm holding down the left mouse button while I click and drag, and Flash will let me actually select a section of the line. I'm going to tap delete. Look at that. Can't do that in Illustrator. Illustrator is a little bit more complicated. Now I've got all these little weird sections that I can click, and it only selected the region that was disconnected. I can delete that. And it's just really powerful once we understand. Ooh, look at that situation. I thought this thing was co-joined up here, and I clicked on this big entity over here, and I can see there's that hash mark pattern that Flash is using to tell me that it's selected. But this guy up here is not. And this is something we got to be very careful of while we're using the pen tool in Flash, because I'll press delete, and I thought I grabbed the whole object, but look, it left something behind. And I hope I don't offend anyone, but I call them turds. They're just little objects left behind that might just get forgotten. So we got to be really careful and get rid of all of our little turds. Delete. Let's get rid of that guy. Now I want to apply this to this motion path that I'm creating. Don't forget, we're trying to make a guide layer with a guide line that this ball can follow. So maybe if I use my pen tool, I wonder what the shortcut key is for that. Whoa, surprise, surprise, P, pen tool, P. That's great, P. Put that in your memory banks, people. And now I'm going to be careful, and instead of just clicking a point and letting go of the mouse button, I'm going to click, hold down the left mouse button, drag it down towards the right, and I'm going to tell Flash, I'm going to click and drag. Whoops, I made a point, undo. Be careful. Oh, there that thing came back. Let's delete that. Whoops, I got to go V key and select it and delete it. Well, it's got to be really organized. P key. Click, hold down the left mouse button, and drag down towards the right. And these Bezier handles come up. That's weird, right? What are those things? The one thing I think people get confused on is this is not going to be seen. You're not going to visually see these things when you export it. It's just helping us know what direction the line is going in. So I need the line to go down to the right. So I'm going to click and drag. I'm still holding the mouse button down. I'm going to tell it, Flash, this line's going to go down towards the right and follow this path. And then I let go. Now I'm going to zip down here to this next point, zoom out a bit. I'm going to be really careful to put my mouse exactly where I need it, where it intersects with the floor. And watch this magic. I can click and drag, and I'm holding my mouse button down, right? And I'm getting the curve I want. And this frustrates people because I want it to be perfect, right? Don't worry about it. We're going to come back and do something called tweaking. And that's the industry term for coming back later and fixing something up. So I'm dragging down towards the right, and then I'm going to press, what key? The Control key? Nope, that didn't work. The Command key? Nope, that didn't work. Oh, wait a sec. It's the Option key. I'm still holding the mouse button down. I press the Option key, and then it releases that Bezier handle so that I can break it into a, what do we call a cusp? So I'm telling the line now to hit the floor and make a radical angular change to go up towards the right. That's cool, right? I let go of the system, I let go of the mouse, I let go of the Option key, and now I've got a curve. That's just the start of this hard, difficult process of getting all the way across this line. Now watch this cool trick. A lot of people would come up here to the top. You don't have to. When you're drawing vectors with a pen tool, you're trying to eliminate the number of lines, the number of anchor points they're called, that are required to make a shape. So I'm going to come all the way down over here. This thing is still selected. I haven't deselected it yet. And I'm going to put my pen down here. I'm going to click, drag down to the right, press the Option key, go up towards the right, and let go. And now I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm not worried that this is perfect, because I can come back and tweak. Option up. Click down here, option down, and we're finished. That one looks actually pretty perfect. That's pretty cool. That's awesome. Right? Now let's tweak. Now that's why we have a white arrow and we got a black arrow. We got a white arrow and we got a black arrow over here in our toolkit. This guy over here is called our sub-selection tool, and it actually allows us to manipulate these vector situations like this point over here. So I'm just going to highlight this, and I'm going to tell Flash I want to work with that anchor point right there. And that's what we call these little points of inflection on our lines. I'm going to click and highlight it, and wow, look, my Bezier handles came back up. Now I can move up here with my sub-selection tool and grab these little handles and tweak. Oh, nice, I'm getting closer. Can I do it up here? Yeah, I can highlight that Bezier point. Wow! And I can click and drag these handles and I can start to massage my line so that it's perfect. I got to do the same over here. Click and drag, bring it up. Over here, got to work left and right side. Whoa, getting closer, almost there. Oh, it's so close. Almost there. Wow, that's pretty perfect. Now I'm going to go over here, I'm going to do the same. And you can spend a little bit more time than I am because I want to get through this video and not waste your time. Yeah, looking pretty good. And this guy over here actually nailed it first time round. So, interesting. Hit the V key to your select tool, click anywhere off the stage in the dark gray area, deselect everything, and let's just analyze what we got here. It's a perfect line that's connected from these anchor points, and this is exactly what goes on in Illustrator, my friends. Now, the ball layer, I had it turned off. Let's turn it back on and let's unlock it. And look what happened. I can grab the ball. I'm going to click and drag it out over here, and then I'm going to let go and snap. Watch, it's magic. Snap. This thing is now snapping to that motion path. Wow. But it's only happening over here at frame 1. We're at frame 1. This keyframe is populated with artwork, the ball itself. I scrub down, 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 and no motion. So what I need to do with Flash is maybe put a keyframe here, or let's just be intrepid and just grab this ball and drag it all the way to the end and see if, oh wow, look what Flash did. It automatically created another keyframe. Now what about the rest of the system? Scrub back and forth. Oh, no way, it automatically, let's hit Command. There's scene 1. And there's scene 2. Very interesting. Okay, so I'm going to close down my SWF, and once again I ran that by pressing Command Return. We'll do it again, Command Return. That's cool. Scene 2 is looking pretty good, except for the fact that we don't have squishing, we don't have any easing, meaning we don't see acceleration or deceleration, so we got to do a little bit of work. Okay, so how do we get this working? We're going to have to insert some sub keyframes. We're going to have to insert some keyframes on this timeline between these two master keyframes. So there's an interesting point over here, right about there, where it hits the ground. That's interesting. Let's highlight that one frame, let's right click on it, and let's insert a keyframe. Cool, now that's a point of interest to me because this is where we can toggle over to our transform tool, Q, and we can squish this down. And now Flash is going to utilize what's called in-betweening to solve for all of the changes between these two keyframes. Now in animation, traditionally you had these artists that would draw these interesting moments. Superman standing on a building, Superman landing on the ground, and then millions of animators would flesh out frames in between. I'm exaggerating. Hundreds and hundreds of animators would flesh out the frames in between and draw all of these in-between frames. So let's scrub the timeline and see what's going on. It's going to start with its width and height property maintained, and then by the time I get to the next keyframe that I created, it's going to be squished. So Flash is going to solve for all those interesting moments in between. That's pretty cool. So let's carry on. We'll go over to here where it hits the floor again. I'm going to insert another keyframe. Insert keyframe. That's cool. And it's going to be squished. Right? Or maybe over here where it hits the floor this time. I'm just going to be a little bit sloppy about this. There might be more work that needs to be done down the line, but you're getting the point. I'm going to insert the keyframe, and I'm going to squish it down. And then at the top of each of these arcs, I'm going to scrub back, and over here, oh, that's weird. So it's not getting to the top of the line. That's because Flash is having this interpolation problem where it can't quite get there. It's because it's like dividing all the distance over this curve. So I'm just going to insert a keyframe here. And I can move this. And don't forget, X and Y is just as much a property as width and height. So I can raise it up here and snap it down to the top of the line. I can stretch it back up. That's cool. Back here, what about here? Does it actually get to the top? Ah, that's perfect. Right around here, around frame 16, I can insert a keyframe. Same thing, I can stretch it up. Now there's an interesting moment over here. I thought it was frame 7, so I'm going to scrub back to frame 7. Oh no, it's actually frame 9. In this context, that's interesting. And it stretches in this weird way. It's like, what is this? That's just to review, that's called anticipation. That's where the shape is doing something unnatural in a physical context, but it's giving the eye a visual cue that there's maybe some motion blur. And if I'm using any of my terms incorrectly, any other animators out there, before you go downstairs and start griefing me, maybe just offer me some help and correct my language. I always encourage my students to be critical that way and really be, you know, positive and benevolent when you're helping people out. So I call it anticipation. That's what I've studied in the past. Could be wrong. You have to be a critical thinker and solve for that yourself. So here at frame 9, I'm going to right-click, select it by clicking on it, and then right-click on it, and then I'm going to convert this to a keyframe, or do I insert? It's confusing. We're actually inserting a keyframe where there wasn't one before. Right? Now I can use my free transform tool, tap the Q key, and I can stretch this, I can squish it, its width and height properties, and I can rotate it into place. I'm going to spend a little bit of time. And now scrub back. That's pretty cool. Let's scrub back. Well, wait a minute. It's not really working. Right about here, I actually need it to be perfectly round. So let's put another keyframe in there. We're doing tweaking of a different type here. Insert a keyframe, and just going to squish it back to a perfectly round. Well, wait a minute. That's not perfectly round. What was it back here at frame 1? Let's highlight it and learn from the Flash system. It's 36.9 by 36.9. Interesting. So when I jump to this keyframe, maybe I can just highlight the object. There we go. Let's use our memories. 36.9 by 36.9. Perfect. Wow. Thank you, Flash, for having these incredible tools. And now let's test it, because we always want to be critical. There's scene 1. Here's scene 2. Interesting. We got a lot of work to do, and I'm going to leave you to your devices, no pun intended, to figure out the rest of the solution. I'll come back and do scene 3, and hopefully you'll find that one to be a little bit simpler to pull off. And I always leave it to the end because programmatic animation is a wonderful thing. And we just have to know the traditions of animation. So we did frame by frame. Now we're using futuristic stuff like in-betweening that's automatically done by Flash CC. And that's wonderful. Flash is handling all the in-between frames between the keyframes we generated. That's awesome. But let's look at the newest approach.